So it's been a while since I've done a tutorial video and I thought I'd change that. So I'm going to show you how I painted these zebras in acrylics and oils. I'm painting on a canvas and as you can already see I have made a start on the painting already. This initial layer is done in acrylics and just very thin washes. I've done a yellow ochre background and a burnt sienna over the zebras because I want this painting to be quite warm and I want these warmer colours to show through in the final piece. I've also blocked in the stripes of the zebra just to make it easier for me with a black acrylic. But the rest of this painting is going to be done in oil paints. There are actually a couple of different ways to start paintings like this. The way that I'm doing now, so drawing in the stripes and painting a relatively detailed underpainting, or being a bit more expressive and starting with big brushes and blocking in big shapes, ignoring the stripes. Which that's a much more fun way of painting, but it's also a lot more difficult, especially when it comes to proportions. So as this is a simple guide, I thought I'd do it the easier way. This video isn't about drawing ability, it's about painting, so feel free to trace or project or grid out the initial underpainting. The second step is blocking in the colours of the zebra, and you might think that they're just black and whites, but actually they are full of colour. And it's not just zebras. All animals with white fur are colourful. And that's actually the secret to painting white fur. Look for the colours and exaggerate them. That's what I do. I'm looking at all of my reference material, and I'm trying to see the bits of colour in and between the stripes. If I see a little bit of purple, then I'm adding purple to my painting. If I'm seeing yellow, I'm adding yellow to the painting. As a general rule, I try to add yellow to the highlights, and brown, blue, or purple to the shadows. All I'm doing is choosing the colours and filling in the gaps between the stripes. I don't need it to be perfect. I can go over the stripes a little bit. I'm mixing my paint with Sansoda, which is a solvent medium, which thins out the paint a little bit. And this makes the paint slightly transparent, so I can still see where those stripes should be. So the first layer on the adult zebra's head is finished. Obviously it doesn't look absolutely perfect yet, there's still a long way to go, but I'm going to move on to the rest of the body and I'm going to time lapse this because it is literally just the same technique that I've just applied for the head that I'm just going to do on his butt. So you can see here how I'm just filling in the gaps with those colours that I've been mixing up on my palette. I'm just looking at the reference photo, pulling out the colours that I can see, and then just mixing exaggerated versions of those colours and adding them to the painting. I really like painting on this orangey yellow background as well because it allows some of those orange and yellows to glow through the painting. Because I've thinned down this layer of oil paint, those warm, bright colours are showing through, and I really like that. And we've done it. I didn't get as much done as I wanted to today. I wanted to get the whole, pretty much all of the zebra and the baby zebra done, but I did not get that done, obviously, as you can see here. So I'm gonna leave it to dry. Ideally, I was gonna work on it tomorrow, but we are away in London, going looking at a gallery tomorrow. So I'm gonna have to leave it until next week, and hopefully I will be able to get the baby zebra to the same level as this one and match the colours, which is gonna be the hardest bit, and then I can make a start on the background. But I'm liking it so far. There's still a very long way to go before I'm going to be completely happy with it, but I'm enjoying the process and I'm really enjoying this new canvas that I'm working on. It's really smooth, but also really grippy at the same time. It really grips the paint. The paint comes off the brush and sticks to the canvas really nicely. It's kind of like a Velcro-y kind of feel. But I'm really excited about this piece and I cannot wait to see how it turns out. The baby zebra is done in pretty much the exact same way as the adult zebra. I'm not going to show you the entire process because I just don't have time in a YouTube video, but if you would like to see more of the process, then I have the full-length video tutorials available to people on Patreon. So please, if you would like to see more cool painting tutorials, consider becoming part of my community. So I'm on to day 3 of the painting process with a little bit less hair on my face and my head as I shave this, and this is just falling out. And I'm a little bit undecided with where I'm going to go with the painting for now. Today's the day I'm going to work on the background and then hopefully tie in that background to the zebras a little bit more. And I'm undecided whether I just want all grassland, so sticking with the yellowy sort of glowy orangey theme and just have grass in the foreground, grass in the background, or whether I want that grass in the foreground and then a sky in the background. So I'm gonna sit down and do some mock-ups and then see which one I prefer and then get started with it. And maybe we'll get this done in just one more session. I'm not completely convinced I'm gonna be able to do that, but I'm gonna give it a go. Let's do it. Step 3 is the background, and I want to paint this while the zebras are still a little bit wet. I want to be able to blend and soften the edges of the zebra into the background a little bit, so it looks like one cohesive painting, and not like I've painted the two separately. I'm doing this after the blocking, but before I do any real detail work on the zebras, as I'm going to rough up the edges of the zebras and I'm going to paint some of that background colour over the top of them, and if I don't want to put all that hard work into painting the details, if I'm just going to paint over it at this stage. And again, we don't really have time for it, but in the Patreon videos I do go through a little bit more detail how I'm painting the background, as well as how I'm mixing the colours all throughout this painting. But basically, I block in all the colour of the background, and then I start adding some texture and some grass-like structures with a bristle brush. I use the bristle brushes when I want a little bit more texture to the painting. And that's pretty much it with the background and the foreground that I can do in this particular layer. The next step is going to be refining the zebras, which yesterday's work is pretty much touch dry. It's still a little bit tacky, so don't know if you can see that, but I've got a little bit on my finger, but that's fine because it still means I'm going to be able to blend with some of those surrounding colours, but it still lets me paint over the top of it without wiping that paint away, which is what I want for this stage. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do now. And then hopefully it's going to look significantly better once I've got those black stripes in. I'm hoping this is the stage that's really going to set this painting apart and really make it pop. But there's still quite a lot of work to do before at that stage, so I'm going to stop talking and I'm going to get painting. So the next step of the painting process is adding the black stripes. I've just made a sort of DIY maul stick. This little hook on the end, and that is just going to allow me to basically just rest my hand as I paint so I don't lean on the canvas, which is a bad thing. So I don't want to get a load of paint on my wrist and I don't want to pull that paint off, so this just helps with that. It's not the most aesthetic looking thing, but it'll do the trick. One thing to note is I'm not actually using black straight out of the tube. I've mixed this black using Payne's Grey, Burnt Umber, Burnt Sienna and a warm blue. I want this sort of chromatic black so that if I mix some grey into there or some white, some of those colours actually show through. This is especially important as we get to the highlights of the stripes, so the areas of the stripes that are in the light, because we don't want to just paint them pure black. But even in the shadows, we don't want to use pure black. We want to add variation, we want to add interest and different colours all throughout this painting. I don't just want to get a flat black straight out of the tube, paint that on all over the stripes, and just make it look like they've been stuck on. So this variation, adding these warmer areas with some browns, some bluer areas with some blues, which will make it cooler, make the painting more interesting and more realistic. Because I'm working on a relatively small canvas, I think it's about 16 by 20 inches, there's not going to be loads of detail that I need to put into these zebras. So I'm not even really thinking about painting the details of the fur, I'm just thinking about the colours and the stripes. However, the one place where I am adding details and fur detail is in the mane. The slightly longer fur here, and I want to show that by adding in some individual strands that are much longer and definitely look like hair strands. And then I can just complete the face in much the same way as I did the rest of the painting. I'm not adding loads of tiny strands of fur detail, I'm just blocking in those stripes, but making sure to add those varied colours. In the areas that are in shadow, a much darker stripe colour. In the areas that are in light, a much light and almost bluey kind of stripe colour. Thinking about those stripes as 3D shapes that are attached to the structure and form of the zebras, like they are actually wrap around all the muscles of the face, if you do not think about that, you just end up with a flat painting. But if you think about those stripes as following the form and the muscles and the bone structure, and you paint them that way, you get a much more realistic 3D looking painting. Especially when you couple that with adding the lights to the stripes as well. So I didn't get anywhere near as much done as I wanted to today, but I am very happy with the progress that I've been making so far on the adult zebra, and tomorrow I'm hopefully going to get this baby zebra done to the same level as the adult one. Well, I mean, I should do, definitely, but this has been an entire day's worth of work so far from what you've last seen, so getting that background in and getting the stripes on the adult zebra. So I can imagine it's going to take me a good couple of hours to get the stripes on the baby as well and get it to a place where I'm happy with. The baby zebra is done in pretty much exactly the same way as the adult zebra. There's no real difference other than the stripes are a little bit smaller and closer together, so it was a little bit more fiddly. But again, if you want to watch that, you can watch it if you become a patron. So come and join the Studio Wildlife community. But once this layer is done, once I've added the stripes to the zebras, I'm gonna have to leave it and let it dry for at least a week. I want to make sure it is completely touch dry and none of the paint is gonna move before I move on to the next step. I've left this painting to dry for about a week. It's still tacky in some places, especially the blacks, but it's going to be dry enough for us to do the next steps. Okay, so for this step of glazing, we're going to be following the fat over lean principle, which means we need more oil than our previous layers. So I'm pretty much just using pure linseed oil now. So to do this, I'm going to take a relatively large filbert brush. I'm just going to feel my canvas. It feels dry, no paint's coming off on my fingers, so we are good to go. And all I'm going to do is just try and unify a few of the shadows a little bit more. And then I'm just creating a mix of Payne's Grey with some burnt umber to create a shadow colour. I'm mixing the paint very, very thinly, so I want a lot of oil in there so it's very transparent and I can glaze over the surface of my oil paint that I've already got down without losing any of the details that I've spent hours and hours already putting in. It's a super subtle thing, like you cannot see that much of a difference, but it just refines the form and the 3D structure of the zebras that little bit more. And this is a technique that I use in oils and acrylic painting. The next step is pretty much doing that exact same thing, but with some highlights. And I'm not using pure white for the highlights. I am mixing it with a little bit of yellow, a little bit of yellow ochre, and a little bit of cadmium yellow to warm it up. I don't want to be using pure white. Glazing this warmer, yellowy, whitey colour over the top of the highlights just gives it this little bit of a glow that makes it look a little bit warmer and like it's hit by the sun. It also helps to unify the stripes a little bit more with those highlights by going over those as well. I also add a tiny bit of thicker, more opaque paint in some of the brightest areas. There are true highlights. So that bright paint will also get picked up by the actual sun when the viewer's looking at it because it's a little bit thicker, adding to the 3D effect of the painting. The final thing that I'm doing is just unifying the foreground and the zebras by adding some more blades of grass over the top of the zebras to really make the foreground and the background and the zebras one cohesive painting and finish it off. Then the final and very last thing that we need to do is sign it. So here it is, here is the finished painting. I hope you've enjoyed the video and I hope you found the tips in here useful and it inspires you to go and paint your own zebras. I will leave a link to the canvas that I'm using in the description if you want to go and check it out. Honestly, it has been a game changer for the way that I work and I would highly recommend it. As always, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you next time.